Chapter 2. Dan Makes a Mess. The chef took Dan to the storeroom. It was full of tins and jars of food. There were sacks of potatoes, bags of flour and boxes of vegetables. In the corner was a very big fridge. "It's untidy in here," said the chef. "Can you tidy it up for me?" "Oh, yes," said Dan. The chef left the storeroom and went into the kitchen. Dan looked at all the tins. There were lots of different sizes, and they were all mixed up. "I'll put all the small tins on the top shelf," thought Dan, "and all the middle-sized tins on the middle shelf, and all the big tins on the bottom shelf. That will be much better." Dan enjoyed sorting out the tins, but the work made him hungry. He opened the big fridge. The food inside it looked very tasty. There were some bowls on the top shelf, and Dan wondered what was in them. He reached up and put his hand in one of them. It was full of sticky jam. Dan tried to shake the jam off his hand. It went everywhere. "Oh, no!" he exclaimed. There was jam on his face, in his hair, on his t-shirt, on his jeans, and even on his shoes. What a mess! "Oh, dear," said Dan. "I promised not to make a mess." Dan stepped back from the fridge, tripped over a box and fell backwards onto a big paper sack. The sack split, and a huge white cloud burst out of it. It was flour. It went all over Dan. He stood up and tried to brush the flour off, but it stuck to the jam. "Oh, no!" groaned Dan. Jane, the waitress, came to see what was wrong. She thought Dan looked funny. "How did you make such a mess?" she laughed. "I don't know," said Dan. "Don't worry," said Jane. "I'll help you tidy up. Then I'll get some clean clothes for you." "Thank you," said Dan. Jane soon cleared up the mess in the storeroom. Then she noticed the tins. "Did you put them like that?" she asked. She looked worried. "Yes," said Dan proudly. "They look tidy now, don't they?" "They do," said Jane, "but I don't think the chef will be very pleased. He won't know where to find anything now, will he?" "Oh," said Dan, "I didn't think of that." "It's okay," said Jane. "You were trying to help. Now, let's go to the laundry room and wash your clothes." Jane took Dan to the laundry room. "We'll put your clothes in the washing machine," she said, "and then we'll put them in the dryer." "What shall I wear while I'm waiting?" Dan asked. Jane took a waiter's uniform out of a drawer. There was a white shirt, a bow tie, black trousers and a white jacket. "You can wear this," she said. Dan put the uniform on. The shirt's sleeves were too long and the jacket was too big. He had to roll up the bottoms of the trousers. But Dan thought he looked very smart. Dan returned to the storeroom. The chef was inside. Dan heard him say, "That silly boy! He's mixed up all the tins. Now I don't know where anything is." "Oops," thought Dan. He was going to say sorry when the manager of the restaurant approached. His name was Mr. Gray. He thought Dan was a waiter because of his uniform. "Hey, you!" said Mr. Gray. "You're late. Go into the restaurant and see if all the glasses are polished." "But," Dan began, "I'm not really—" "Hurry up," said Mr. Gray. "The guests will be arriving soon. There's a lot to do before they come."